what's on my mind.
Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Caitlin and I upload 3 times a week on this channel. Wednesdays are fashion and lifestyle videos, Fridays are weekly uni vlogs of my life at university, and Sundays are my Unsolved Sundays where I discuss some sort of unsolved mystery case, disappearance case, anything along those lines. So today I'm back discussing the case of Tara Calico, and this is a very strange case. I say that in every video. Every video that I research I always completely get really involved in. So there's a lot to discuss with this case, so I won't, as always, cover everything in this video. This video mainly focuses on kind of what happened and the evidence that has been gathered about it. So as always, in the comments, leave any discussion points, any theories you've read, anything along those lines, like what you think happened. Leave all that down below, as well as anything that I have maybe missed, if I've missed out a piece of research or something, and also any other cases you want me to do in future weeks' videos. And we shall just get started with the case of the disappearance of Tara Calico. I also just want to say really quickly that if at any point you hear like a really weird whirring noise, it happens in a couple of my videos. It's because basically I live in the roof of my very old house, and the windows aren't very well insulated, so where it's been quite snowy and windy at the moment, sometimes the wind just hits the panels and makes like a whirring noise, so I'm sorry about that. I try and get it out in my videos where I can, but I can't always avoid it, so that's just what that is. So Tara Lee Calico was born on February 28th, 1969 in a place called Belen, Albuquerque, New Mexico. She was an absolutely gorgeous girl. Everyone in this case throughout said how stunning she was. You'll see photos of her, I'll put them on the screen. She was a gorgeous girl. She had long brown hair that she usually permed, and some of her defining features were that she had 2 scars, one on the back of her right shoulder as well as one on the back of her leg. So Tara was an extremely gifted girl. She was very smart, very talented, and sort of in the later years of high school she began taking classes in the Valencia campus of the University of New Mexico. So she majored in psychology, and then straight after graduating high school she went and got a job in a place called Belen's First National Bank. She stayed in this job at Belen's First National Bank for around 11 months before she decided that she wanted to take up classes full-time. She attended school full-time. She quit in August of 1988 and attended school as a full-time student. In January 1975, Tara's parents actually separated and eventually divorced. And then later that same year, Patty Calico, who's Tara's mum, she actually remarried. So Patty actually remarried a name called John Dole. He was a fellow worker at the Santa Fe Railway, and he also had 2 kids from his previous marriage. When Patty and John actually got married, she was only around 6 years old at the time, and all the statements say that John loved Tara since that day, that he met her as though she was his own child. Apparently they had a really close relationship, a really good relationship, and John treated her and loved her like his own daughter. So Tara was actually described as being hugely independent and very ahead of her age from a young age. She had a love for animals. She was really known for having a huge love for animals, and just 10 days before her disappearance she actually had bought a Rottweiler for her stepdad John for his birthday, and she'd given it to him. So she was a very well loved and just well-rounded girl. Tara was also known as being extremely athletic. She was the manager of her high school track team. She won a bunch of medals, and she also went on a long distance bike ride every morning, early hours of the morning, whenever she could. And that kind of plays into this case, but she was just a very in shape, very athletic girl. Tara was known to cycle down the end half of the New Mexico State Road 47. It was a pretty straight ride down the railroad tracks to Diablo Road, which is where she would bike to and then turn back and head home. So in total the bike ride would be about 34 miles long, during which both ways she would encounter isolated areas. It was very isolated, rural, and she would encounter patches of desert on her journey as well. Just a couple months before Tara disappeared, Tara's mum had actually attempted to do the same bike ride because she watched her daughter do it virtually every morning, and she'd actually come back from that bike ride too frightened to ever do the same route again, because she said she'd noticed a man following her close behind in his car. So after this, Patty had tried to get her daughter to change her route, or at least take something with her like mace to protect herself while she's on her bike, because she doesn't obviously carry a lot with her, so she can just arm herself with something. But Patty said that Tara was adamant that she didn't feel any element of danger that she felt when she was bike riding down that route, so she just chose to ignore her mother's wishes and continued to do so because she said she knew the area and she just felt comfortable doing it. So now on to the actual incident of Tara's disappearance. On September the 20th, 1988, Tara woke up before 9 a.m. and got ready for her bike ride. She laid out her tennis clothes and her school books on her bed. She had a tennis match with her boyfriend. I think it was around midday it was booked for, so she was getting everything ready. And then she had classes later in the afternoon. So she headed out for her bike ride with everything laid out, and she actually took Patty's pink bike that day because her bike had a flat tyre. Just before she left, she told Patty that if she didn't return by noon, she'd probably just lost track of time because obviously they didn't really have phones or anything. So she asked Patty to come drive and pick her up from wherever she was because she knew the route, so she'd just have to drive up and down it to find her, just so she could make it for her tennis match that she had booked with her boyfriend. So her route that day, nothing was out of the ordinary. She rode the first 17 miles down to the railroad tracks and encountered nothing strange, and then she turned back to head on her journey home. At 11:30, two men working on a ranch that was on her route saw her biking home. She was biking north up towards her home. At 11:45, three men were returning home from a hunting trip. They were driving down the Route 47 and they were driving south. The three men noticed Tara pedaling on her bike. She was heading up towards her home in the other direction, and they saw very closely behind her was an off-white truck. She was being trailed very closely behind by an off-white pickup truck, but she appeared unaware because she had her headphones on. So these three men said that she did not seem to notice that this truck was following her. Around the same time, another man noticed the same occurrence. He saw Tara seemingly unaware of a massive white pickup truck following her. This man said that he seemed to notice, he think there was at least one man in the car alongside the driver, and this particular eyewitness testimony was the last known sighting of Tara Calico that day. At 12:05, Patty left the house in her car to go and find Tara as she'd been told because she hadn't returned home. She drove down to the railroad tracks and back up twice, and she did not see Tara. She had no idea where she'd gone because she was not on her usual route. So Patty's first thought was that perhaps she had been involved in some kind of accident, along the road she could have been hit by a car or something along those lines. So the first thing she did was ring up all the local hospitals to see if they had anyone matching her description or anyone in Tara's name, and they had no one. She then chose to contact a whole group of Tara's closest friends to help her look, because obviously they'd all know where she typically would go if she wasn't on her usual route, and they still found no sign of her or her bicycle. So this was when Patty panicked and she realised that there was absolutely no sign of her daughter, and she chose to contact the Valencia County Sheriff's Department to report her daughter as officially missing. So the sheriff, his name was Lawrence Romero, he decided to immediately, because she was such a young girl and she had a routine and it didn't seem likely that she would just for some reason break out of this routine, he decided to act on this case as immediately as though foul play had been involved. The next day, on the west of the highway, investigators discovered a set of bike tracks that seemed to veer off the road onto the soft shoulder of the road. The bike tracks led to about 100 yards just off the side of the road, where they stopped, and then they found some fresh tyre tracks and also a patch of oil. From this spot there was a bunch of fresh footprints that led away to a different spot, which led to a huge break in the case, and where the footprints stopped, they discovered a music cassette tape of the band Boston, which actually belonged to Tara, and she had allegedly been listening to it on her bike ride that day. There was also a piece of plastic right next to the cassette tape, which was later discovered to be the plastic front cover window of her Walkman music player. On September 24th, around 20 miles away, they discovered the rest of her Walkman, the rest of her smashed up Walkman. It was just close to the entrance of a campground. It was a really remote campground just at the base of the Mazzano Mountains, I think that's how you pronounce it. Obviously, because it seemed to be leading in this direction, authorities gathered a huge amount of resources to scour the entire mountain range area, all the rivers, everything, all the isolated remote ground, but they found nothing. Investigators' next point of focus was to question any potential witnesses that had been along the NM Road 47, and in total they gathered 7 different witnesses, 5 of which saw the suspicious off-white pickup truck following her. So I have a list here of a number of potential leads that investigators chose to follow. Obviously not all of them, but there were quite a few, so I'm just going to read off some here now. So Deborah Lindsell was a 29-year-old nurse who disappeared from Belen. She disappeared under some very strange circumstances if you want to look up the case, but she also disappeared around September of 1985, so it wasn't that long before Tara's disappearance. At first, investigators chose to investigate any sort of links between these cases, whether it could have potentially been the same abductor or the same person who attacked them, but this was immediately ruled out as there was no sort of initial evidence to suggest a necessary link. A Bike's water bottle was found in a local resident's garden, and it was turned in potentially with the hopes of it belonging to Tara, but Patty said it didn't match the description of the water bottle that Tara owned and she would have left with that day. Investigators found a small patch of land or ground that had appeared to be disturbed just along the side of NM Road 47, so they decided to dig it up and search the area, but they found nothing. So I think they just assumed that perhaps this was a potential either abduction site or burial site. Similarly to this, a woman had called the tip line saying that she had heard digging in a field kind of not far from where Tara was, allegedly last seen. And so they chose to excavate the entire field to see if there was any sign there, but nothing was found again. Authorities also chose to investigate or question 3 men who'd been sat in their pickup truck drinking beer, but when they were questioned, they found that the beer cans or the beer they were drinking didn't match the cans found in the area of where her cassette tape was found. On October 25th, the lead investigator declared that they were convinced that there was more than one person involved in the abduction. There was more than one person seen apparently by that eyewitness. So they went along the lines that there was a couple people involved in taking Tara. There's a description here of what that eyewitness allegedly saw or thinks they saw. So the person claimed to see the person driving was believed to be 35 to 45 years old, Caucasian with reddy brown hair, believed to be between 5'9" and 6 foot. And he also had what appeared to be deep wrinkles between his eyes and his temples. In support of this idea that there would need to be more than one attacker comes with the idea of Tara's athleticism. Many people think that because she was very athletic, it is very unlikely for one person, despite being in a car, to actually get out of the car and outrun her if they were to abduct her. So it kind of just makes it more likely that there was at least 2 people involved in abducting Tara. The car that the witnesses allegedly claimed to see was an off-white/white mid-50s to early 60s Ford pickup with a camper shell, chrome wheels, oversized tyres and a Ford emblem with crushed red glass letters. It had New Mexico license plates believed to begin with WBY or WBZ and ending in 6. So a number of potential leads came forward with kind of this description, but nothing ever stuck. They didn't find the actual truck that was seen that day. On June 15th, 1989, in Port St. Joe, Florida, a woman was leaving a convenience store or a grocery store when she found a Polaroid, just a lone Polaroid, on the floor in a parking space. She said that when she'd gone into the store, she remembered seeing a white Toyota cargo van parked in that spot, and then it had already gone when she'd left the convenience store with only the Polaroid in its space. Polaroid featured a young girl and an even younger boy. It appeared to be like a teenage girl and a young boy, gagged with duct tape, and their wrists were bound behind their backs and their legs were bound together, and it appeared that they were inside a van. The photo was immediately handed into the authorities by this woman, and the first move was to contact the company that developed the photo, who said that the photo had been developed in May of that year. When the photo was discovered, members of Tara's family, kind of like more distant family, they were watching a TV show in their home in Albuquerque when I think it was just like a kind of a news show appeared on the screen, like it showed a photo of the Polaroid, and the family members immediately recognised it as Tara without her makeup and her usual permed hair, so they chose to ring up Patty straight away and tell her what they'd seen. A number of missing children's names came forward in hopes of identifying who the young boy was that was seen with the girl that was believed to be Tara, the most likely of which being a young boy named Michael Henley. He was only 10 when he disappeared just 5 months before Tara did. He'd been out camping with his dad when his dad turned his back and he disappeared out of sight, which has actually now, I believe, been disproven. It's not Michael Henley in the photos. From what I can gather, I believe Michael Henley's body unfortunately was found in the area where they were camping a little bit later. I think he'd been attacked by a wild animal, so they still don't know who the young boy in the photo is. Patty flew out to Florida to actually see the Polaroid herself and identify it as Tara. She confirmed that she very strongly believed it was Tara. I think partly because of the scar that you could see. She claimed she could see her distinctive scar on her leg. I can't personally see it in the photo, but it might just be because of not seeing it in person. But obviously they can only conclude it to some extent, so they could never fully conclude that it is definitely Tara in the photo. They can only go on Patty's description and what Patty believes. In later years, 2 more Polaroid photos surfaced that appeared to show a girl that kind of looked like Tara in bondage, but Patty actually has said that she very highly doubts it is Tara. The photos were never publicly released, so obviously it's not something that we can all speculate on, but she believes that it wasn't Tara, so I don't know whether that means that she thinks it was maybe like a hoax, or just another incident of another girl who, like, similar looks, like brunette and things, unfortunately in the same situation, I don't know. But Patty says she believes that those particular later photos were not of Tara, only the first Polaroid was of her daughter. In 1991, Tara's mum and stepdad John decided that they would apply to become official deputies so they could conduct their own investigation. They did so, they managed to become authorised deputies, and they decided to conduct their own investigation and inquiry into Tara's disappearance. They've gone on record saying that they didn't trust the investigation carried out throughout the whole case, because they believed that there was a number of things that were quite off about the way the investigation was conducted. So one of the first reasons that actually flagged up a huge issue with them was that 3 of the strongest potential suspects actually killed themselves just days before they were supposed to be questioned. And there's a lot of issues as to, why did this happen? This can't just be a coincidence because all 3 of them killed themselves. Fortunately, that was it for the case. The case didn't turn up any new leads until September 2008, when a sheriff announced publicly that he claimed to know what had happened to Tara Calico that day. He claimed that 4 young boys who were acquaintances of Tara accidentally hit her with their pickup truck while they were riding down NM Road 47. He claimed that they threw her and her bike in the back of their pickup truck and then took her to a gravel pit. He then threatened to tell the authorities that they had hit her. They decided to kill her to save their own backs, and they threw her bike into a junkyard. He also claimed that their parents knew of it and their parents' acquaintances knew of it and helped aid the cover-up to ensure their sons or their children didn't get in any trouble. And there was a huge cover-up, but because there was no body and no evidence, that he couldn't do anything about it when he learnt of it at the time. So when this surfaced, Tara's stepfather John became particularly angered by this. He went on record saying that he was very unhappy and very unsure as to why the sheriff would go on record saying that he didn't have enough evidence to arrest them at the time, but he had enough evidence to believe it was true and to come out and say it publicly. So there was a lot of issues with that, whether it's credible. There's, again, no evidence as to one way or the other. I particularly don't feel the strongest about this. I mean, it would fit with everything. It's just a little bit strange how he waited so long to come out about it, even though he still doesn't have any evidence. It's quite strange. In 2009, the police chief of Port St. Joe, Florida, received 2 photos of a young boy with sandy coloured hair. One of the photos was just the original photo of him, and the second photo had a black marker on his mouth, covering his mouth to resemble tape. The first photo was marked June the 10th, and the second was marked August the 10th. And both had been marked from Albuquerque, which is obviously where Tara disappeared from, but they had no return address. On August the 12th, a Port St. Joe, Florida newspaper actually received the same photo of the boy with the marker scribbled over his mouth. And this raised a lot of questions as to whether this was related to Tara, whether there was someone who was doing this to a bunch of kids and sending it out to authorities to try and, I don't know, wind them up or something. And it's never identified who the boy was or whether there was any relation, but it just seems quite weird that newspapers were receiving these photos of, these Polaroid photos of tied up children. Another strange thing that happened sort of in the span of this case was that in November 2002, Tara's father was walking home from a bar kind of late at night and he was mugged. The 2 men that attacked him took his wallet, his 2 rings, and also his heart medication that he'd on. He went home that night, went to bed, and unfortunately he died of a heart attack in his sleep because they'd taken his heart medication. That's absolutely heartbreaking, and unfortunately Tara's father never actually got any answers as to what happened to Tara. Patty and John moved in 2003 from Albuquerque to Port Charlotte in Florida to be closer to the investigation. Not long after this, Patty began suffering from a series of strokes, and unfortunately because of these strokes she died on May the 11th, 2006, again not receiving any answers as to her daughter's disappearance. In Patty's obituary, Tara is actually listed as a survivor, and John, her stepfather, is alive today, allegedly still looking for answers as to where Tara is. So that is everything I'm going to talk about today. I'm not going to talk about any of the theories. I couldn't find anything super strong, but let me know down below any theories that you've read about and anything that you think, any opinions you have, anything along those lines. Also any cases you want me to discuss in future weeks' videos. I hope you guys found this interesting, and I will see you guys soon for another video. Bye.